Hello and welcome back. Hope you guys have been staying at home and enjoying your HBL so far. This is chapter 14 of Boy in the Striped Pyjamas, where Bruno tells a perfectly reasonable lie. The quiz, if we were in class, would be about what did Bruno lie about, but as you go through this lesson you are going to find out what happened anyway, so I'm just going to give you the answer. This is the chapter where Bruno lies about Shmuel being an imaginary friend when Gretel asked him about Shmuel. Here's the story outline. Please take some time to copy it down in your notebook. This is the chapter where Gretel came in because she was bored as it was raining, and Bruno accidentally said Shmuel's name, and Gretel caught on to it like a predator and kept grilling him about Shmuel, and Bruno had to lie and said that he was an imaginary friend. Okay, let's look at Bruno's character. On page 155, he felt an urge to help his friend, but he couldn't think of anything he could do to make it better. Here, we see that Bruno is like the Germans during World War II, during Hitler's rule. They saw all the bad things that were happening to the Jews, but they couldn't do much about it. So it's the same with Bruno. It's like a micro version of how the Germans were, what the Germans were doing during that time. Page 156, where Bruno says, "You haven't tried living in my house. For one thing, it doesn't have 5 floors, only 3. Here we see this very ridiculous statement from Bruno where he tells Shmuel that his house only has 3 floors. He completely forgot that Shmuel has 11 people living in the same room, which is way worse than having only 3 floors to live in. I mean, for all of us living in Singapore, most of us only have like a single story HDB flat. Okay, so even we can understand how ridiculous Bruno is coming from, and that's why I say he's incredibly privileged and spoiled. Page 159, the words were out of his mouth quicker than he could stop them. So this is where Bruno slipped out Shmuel's name to Gretel. So we can say that he sometimes gets carried away by the moment where he gets so excited and things start coming out from his mouth. I'm sure all of us can relate. Page 160, and although he had never bothered to ask her, there was every chance that she was just as lonely as he was at out with. Here we see Bruno having a lot of empathy for Gretel. The two of them are irritated at each other because of the rain and because they're siblings, so they have to quarrel. But he realized and empathized with her that she was just as lonely as he was at out with, and that's why he entertained her and talked to her. Pretty nice boy. Page 163, when Bruno said them out loud himself, he felt terrible that he hadn't tried to say anything to cheer Shmuel up, and instead he had started talking about something silly, like exploring. Here Bruno realized, after telling Gretel about Shmuel, that Shmuel's life is really terrible. He lives in a single room with 11 people, his father suffers greatly, his family has been forced to move out of Poland, of their nice home in Poland, and living in this crappy place. His grandparents has gone missing. So here Bruno suddenly realizes it's like a moment of character growth for him. Okay, only when he says these words out, he realizes that, hey, maybe I've been a very spoiled little boy to Shmuel. So it's time to improve my behavior. Of course, this is very funny because the very next chapter he betrays Shmuel. So now let's take a look at the character of Shmuel. On page 156, Shmuel blinked and opened his mouth to say something, but then thought better of it. So this is the part where Bruno says to Shmuel, "But don't you ever wake up in the morning and feel like wearing something different? There must be something else in your wardrobe." Extremely sensitive thing to say to someone who is obviously wearing striped pajamas every single day not out of choice. So Shmuel has a very mature reaction. He understands that Bruno didn't mean to cause offense. Okay, he knows that Bruno didn't say it just to annoy him or something, which is a lesson that all of us can learn from Shmuel. Because I'm sure that every one of us have encountered situations where our friends said something that made us very annoyed, and most of the time these people did not actually mean to cause offense. Page 160, let's look at the character of Gretel, where she says to Bruno, "Aren't you a little old for an imaginary friend?" So this is a very typical character trait of Gretel. She makes fun of Bruno every chance she gets. On page 163, where Gretel says, "If father knew you were talking to imaginary friends, you'd be in for it," said Gretel. "I think you should stop." Here we actually see that in the midst of making fun of Bruno, Gretel actually gives some very good elder sister kind of advice, where she's telling Bruno basically to grow up, because if you don't, father is going to do worse things to you than just make fun of you. On page 164, where Gretel says, "I can't afford to act like a child even if you can." Here you see the character of Gretel is reflected very well from this statement. We know that Gretel is someone who bends to society's expectations. Society says girls should play with dolls, and Gretel starts playing with dolls. Society says elder sisters should behave this way, so she behaves a certain way, and because society says that people who are 12 should start behaving like an adult, especially when you're the elder sibling, she listens as well. And later on we know that she listens to Hairley's lessons and starts getting interested in history and putting up maps in her room, replacing her dolls. So for the exit card question today, what would have happened if Bruno had told Gretel about Shmuel? I want you to think about what possibly would have happened. Would Gretel cause trouble for Shmuel? Would she have told her parents? And what would have happened to Shmuel? Write this answer in your literature notebook because you don't have your exit cards with you. Okay, and I'll see you when school reopens. Okay, remember to smash that like button. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye bye.